Since we're talking about injuries, this whole MVP conversation has completely changed and changed for not the better, but I would say changed in an interesting fashion. So obviously we had Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, a list of players kind of out there being thrown for the possibility of an MVP. Joel Embiid is hurt. LeBron James is hurt. Stephen Curry is hurt. I mean, if you really think about it, that's three MVP potential candidates. Kevin Durant is also hurt.
Hmm.
The MVP conversation has literally flipped from four of those names to four names that we had mentioned earlier throughout the season that we had projected to maybe make some impact. Damian Lillard is getting, additional looks. Luka Doncic is playing out of his mind. We have Nikola Jokic, who's still dominating in the league right now. So he would probably get, not I want to say catapult Joel, but like take over the number one spot. And like I said last time, James Harden is playing absolutely insane over the last month or so. Kyrie is out once again with family matters, and Kevin Durant's still battling a hamstring injury. So can James Harden really catapult from maybe the fifth or fourth best odds to capture the MVP all the way to first and make up that ground because of all of these injuries? I don't know. We don't know how long Steph's out. Joel's supposed to come back hopefully next week. So, I mean, Braun is out for a month. It really is up in the air. Damian Lillard, I believe, is starting to get a lot of attention. He's been playing very consistent, averaging just about 30 points a game, leading Portland to the sixth seed in the Western Conference. And he's got his running mate in CJ McCollum back, and Carmelo Anthony's having a great season. So Portland is making a name for themselves, and Portland is led by the phenomenal play of Damian Lillard. Logo Lillard's out here doing what he needs to do. And
Hmm.
like I told you before the episode, maybe because the attention isn't focused on those three or four other players, that Dame could get the attention that he rightfully deserves because he was averaging these numbers even though these other players were still active. But nobody paid attention to him because he plays for Portland or because Portland's not a top five seed. But now maybe because those numbers are remaining consistent and the other players aren't being, prioritized, Dame could start getting some media spotlight because we all know what happens when Dame gets hot. We saw what happened in the bubble. You disrespect him, he going to drop 40, 50 points on the regular.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. This MVP race is tightening up and some other names are being thrown in there right now. And I'm not opposed to it. It makes it a really competitive point in the season right now.
Just looking at the landscape right now, it's so difficult to really pick a player right now because you can make a case for two or three guys off the top. I can make a case for two or three guys off the top of my head just based off the last month or two. Look at somebody like Luka Doncic. Since the beginning of 2021, he's been absolutely balling out. The last 2 months, I want to believe in the month of February, he was averaging around 30 points a game. And then this month, he even got better, and now he's averaging 32 points a game. And because of his play, Dallas is sitting at the 8th seed right now, and it was a lot better than where they were sitting in probably 3 months ago when you and I were having conversations on whether or not that Rick Carlisle could be on the hot seat with the fact of Dallas playing so inconsistently bad in the first half of the season, but they have really turned it around. And in large part, it's due to Luka just absolutely going out there and just crushing it on the court. When you look at some of these other guys, the only constant though is probably Nikola Jokic because he's been playing in every single game. He hasn't been dealing with any sort of injuries. And look, the analytics are on his side. His PER is very solid. His win shares, whether it's just win shares by itself or win shares per 48 possessions, he's basically either number one or top five in the league when it comes to those advanced metrics. The only problem is that he's not really an exciting player. He's great at what he does for a 7-footer to go out there and average 27, 11, and 8. And kind of almost be disrespected to the fact where he doesn't get the same amount of shine as somebody like James Harden right now, who's just absolutely going out there and just doing work for Brooklyn. I wish Nikola Jokic would get some more shine. It's just that it's Denver. They have Jamal Murray. Nikola Jokic is doing what he needs to do, but it's just the Clippers are sitting at that 5 spot. And I really do think to a certain extent
The Nuggets,
that, did I say, what did I say?
you said Clippers.
Yeah, I'll take that back. Denver. I just think with them being at that 5 spot, they don't get the shine that I think they deserve. Or I don't think that Nikola Jokic gets the shine that he deserves compared to somebody like James Harden. James Harden has that team sitting at the number 2 spot behind Philly. They can't overtake Philly right now. It's just because Philly's been playing pretty well despite Joel being out of the lineup. You got to give a lot of credit to Ben Simmons for doing what he's doing, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And then when you look at somebody like Damian Lillard, Dame is one of the most, how do I say this? He is one of the best players in the game right now, but he's never regarded in this MVP discussion. It's like you said, plays in Portland. Portland is a team that is a middle of the pack team in the Western Conference, but they can never get to that like top 3, top 2 team in the Western Conference. And in large part, it's just due to the fact that the Western Conference is just so stacked when you look at this team, when you look at this conference from top to bottom. I think if the Trailblazers were probably sitting at the 3 seed right now instead of the 6, Dame would be at the top of the list when it comes to this
Big time.
MVP race. It's just with them being at the 6, granted they have a 25-17 record, and in the last 10 games, they're 7-3, so they're definitely playing solid basketball. It's just they're not in that top echelon of the Western Conference, and I think that does detract a little bit of a case away from Damian Lillard being at the top of the MVP race at this point. I mean, just to kind of look at the rest of the MVP players, like just from top to bottom, if I had to say like the top 3 guys in no specific order, I'd say probably James right now. I would say Nikola Jokic. And then if I had to throw a third one, I'd probably say Dame. But and this is in no specific order, you guys. So those are just kind of like 3 players that I have right now. And in large part, it's just due to the fact that these top guys that we had maybe 2 weeks ago with LeBron, Steph, and Joel being out of the lineup for at least the next couple of weeks, it gives these second-tier MVP guys a real look at possibly stealing the MVP in the second half of the season. It really does kind of remind me of something that happened probably back in the 2010s when it looked like LeBron James was going to win the MVP when he was with Miami, and then Derrick Rose snatches the MVP right at the end from LeBron's grasp. It could be a very similar situation this year, just because we had pretty much Joel and Nikola Jokic really at that top 1 or 2 spot. But with Joel out, it does really open the door for a lot of these guys to make a case. What about Giannis? Look, I'm going to just lay it out for you guys. If you look at the Bucks right now, they're sitting at that 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference right now. They're actually only 2 games back of the 76ers. So the Bucks are at least competing for that top spot in the Eastern Conference. They're 9-1 in their last 10 games. They've won 6 in a row. What would you say that Giannis's prospects are for a possible 3rd MVP to his career at this point?
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it, to be honest with you. I really wouldn't. I think that the addition of Drew Holiday has tremendously helped their 3-point shooting. Obviously, the elevation of skill that Chris Middleton brings to the table and the depth of their bench. And now the acquisition of PJ Tucker to add that defensive, gritty kind of player to the bench. I think that Giannis's campaign for a 3rd MVP is definitely climbing, but I think that he has too much ground to honestly make up throughout the entire portion of this season, because earlier on in the season, the Bucks were kind of average, like 5th, 4th seed. They weren't really doing much. Giannis wasn't playing very well, still can't really shoot the basketball. But his elevation of play recently has definitely catapulted him back into the conversation. But there are still players that are very well ahead of him. So can Giannis push the last 2 months of the year to try to make a run for a 3rd? Yeah, because he's still Giannis. But do I think it's possible? No.
Let me ask you, just to kind of get us a lay of the land when it comes to the MVP. Like, if you had to name 3 guys right now, it doesn't have to be in any specific order, who would be the 3 guys that you would say are going for that top spot at the MVP?
I'm reiterating exactly what you said. It's Jokic, it's James, and it's Dame.
It's a fair point.
I would, as a Mavericks fan, I would truly and honestly love to say Luka Doncic, and he has carried us from the bottom of the Western Conference to obviously the bottom of the playoff Western Conference. So yes, we are trending in the right direction, but because we all know how the MVP works, best player on the best team on the best conference, we all know how that kind of works. So I'm not surprised at all that he's not going to get as many votes as I would like, but he has improved all statistical categories from the beginning of the season to the end. So, I mean, he will get, at least I would hope, a vote or two because of the impact he has. But we all know what happens. You're not going to give an MVP to no eighth seed in the West. So
just to reiterate, James, Jokic, and Dame.